work, an antidote to over-policing, is for people like me, people in power and people who are elected, who you elect to defend your culture and your values, to be unafraid to snatch a badge if somebody does something egregious. If you empty a magazine to someone with their hands up, you get your badge snatched, period. You institute programs and policies to change the culture of the department. You hire leaders like Sarah Lynn Davis, who's unafraid to discipline and who will set a standard of respect and decent treatment for all citizens. So when I say I'm a governing progressive, I can't run Durham or participate in the governance of Durham based upon some nationalized talking points or a composite of all of the worst elements of some disembodied kind of vaporous police department, this boogeyman or boogeywoman police department, and govern Durham as if that prevailing nationalized composite is on the ground here. I have to govern according to the data points in my city. I'm a Durham City Council person, and I'll be the first person on the Durham City Council to call for swift action if any of our citizens are mistreated by state actors. But when you've got a leader like Sarah Lynn Davis, when you have activists who have worked hard to do work to transform the department, I don't think there's anything wrong with trusting the work and also demonstrating that you're capable of governing a great American city that's growing.
Definitely, and I can definitely agree with what you're saying. There's no doubt about that, and we've seen that kind of leadership that has been taking place here in Durham. Mr. Middleton, if you'll stay on the line, I do. Dean,
sure.
If we can bring in the other guests, I want to bring him in, and I think Mr. Barnes might be calling in later on as well, but I think we have another guest that will be talking about his issue as well, and he's done a lot of stuff with the military and is actually one of our guests from outside of the Durham area, but definitely hoping to have our next guest as well. So, Dean, you want to drop a quick spot, and then we'll bring in the next guest?
All right, y'all. It's Straight Talk with Dina Mark. We'll be back in just 1 second.
This is Nikki Hall, founder of Simply Radiant LLC, a woman with great passion and skill to make you look and feel better. Meet me where you are. Let's take it to another level, a new you. See you soon. Call 919-971-6243. Make your place today.
All right, Mr. Dunquist, you are now on the line. Welcome to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark.
Thank you very much for having me.
How you doing, Mr. Dunquist? Glad to have you on the conversation as well.
I'm doing great.
You have written a very powerful book about some of your experiences. I know that you have spent some time with the military and things of that nature, and you have written a book about some of the amazing people that you have met. You've heard Mark-Anthony Middleton talk about some of his activism work in both New York as well as Greensboro and Durham. So I'm sure that these are some of the same kind of people that you met even while you were serving in the military and doing other things around the country. So tell us a little bit about your background and about your work.
Well, it was very nice listening to your prior guest there. I'm glad there is somebody out there in the political world that is actually helping people as opposed to just talking. I did 22 years in the military. It was broken up between 1969 when I joined the Marines. I spent a little bit of time in Vietnam, very little. I spent a lot of time in the Western Pacific, very near Vietnam. I became a police officer after that. Then I went on to do some very lucrative but boring work with computers, and so I went back into the military reserve, and 10 years after that, I was in the National Guard, and we ended up in Baghdad in 2003 with a military police company from the Connecticut Army National Guard.
Wow. Well, you've heard our prior guest, Mr. Middleton, who's still on the line, talking about how progressive our current police chief is and everything. What are some of the misconceptions that you have found that people have about police work and things of that nature? Like you said, you've been a police officer yourself. You've also served in the military. So I'm sure that you have some misconceptions that people always have about the police. So what are some of those misconceptions that you have found as one that has worked in the field?
Well, as a small-town police officer, I was 26,000 people covering about 35 square miles. You would think nothing happened, but small towns have their problems, and we were rolling on medical emergencies several times a week, plus motor vehicle accidents with injured peoples. We were the first responders. So we were doing a lot of first aid. We were helping a lot of people. We were saving a lot of lives. And people don't see that in a small town. They think, it's Barney Fife. And, yeah, we had our days. I can remember 1 2-week period, we never took a call on the midnight shift. And then at change of shift, we had 3 children hit by a hit-and-run driver. 2 were dead at the scene. 1 we tried to save. It was unsuccessful. That was followed by 3 kids breaking into cars in a neighborhood, and that was immediately followed by a husband shooting his wife, all in the period of 2 hours. And that's a small-town cop. Now, transfer that to the National Guard and the military police. In the 60s and 70s, the National Guard was a good place to go and serve your country, fulfill your military commitment, sidestep the draft so you didn't have to go to Vietnam. When we got to Baghdad, we were supposed to be about 20% of a 1,000-person military police battalion. Well, the National Guard made up 60% of that military police battalion. And when they rotated back to Germany, we were transferred to a battalion from the Tennessee Army National Guard, and every soldier there was a National Guardsman. So the days of 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year, that's long gone. National Guard units are getting activated almost once every 3 or 4 years. So and we were in the middle of it. We were in western Baghdad. We were on the streets. It wasn't like they posted us someplace where nobody would see us and we couldn't get hurt. We picked up 15 Purple Hearts and quite a few awards for bravery and valor under fire.
Wow. And you were in an area that was in the middle of a war, so you were also doing all of this in some very tense kind of environment because, like I said, it's a war that has been still continuing to this day. I mean, it's a war that started in 2001 or thereabouts and is getting ready to come up on its 20th anniversary, so it's one that is continuing to happen even to this day. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that, as well as also about the book that you wrote, because you wrote this book that shares a little bit about what you went through and also some heroes that you discovered while you were going through all of this.
Well, when I came back, a teacher who was the son of a friend of mine from going back into the 60s asked me to do some Veterans Day presentations at their school. And I did that, and a teacher came up afterwards and said, my friend was over there. And I had already talked about the worst day of my life, I'm going to have to say, where we got hit and 2 male soldiers had their legs shredded by shrapnel, and a young lady was killed. And 6 of the military police officers from my company went to their aid, rescued them under fire. They were able to save the 2 male soldiers who were wounded, but unfortunately the young lady was dead on impact. And I only mentioned the one name, and that's Rachel Boswell. That's the young lady we lost. It still bothers me today. It'll bother me the rest of my life, and it bothers the unit. And anyways, the teacher comes up to me and said, my best friend was over there. We go on vacation together. Our kids play together. Got out to dinner together. Maybe you know her. She was over there. And I'm thinking, okay, 165,000 in my rotation. How in the heck am I going to know her? And she goes, Andrea Cloutier. I go, like getting hit with a baseball bat. I go, remember I told you 6 MPs from our company went and rescued those soldiers that were wounded? Oh, yeah. I go, Andrea was one of them, and she got a Army Commendation Medal with V for Valor for bravery under fire. She goes, I didn't know that. I go, did she mention that about 12 hours later she was monitoring one of our police stations, Iraqi police stations out there in western Baghdad, and a suicide bomber with an SUV packed with explosives tried to take her police station down around her ears, and destroyed several buildings, including the police station, and wounded a couple of her soldiers that she was the squad leader of. And she goes, I didn't know that. No, I hadn't heard about that one. And so that, that kind of stuck with me. And then I was having dinner at a law enforcement function. I was sitting next to the chief of police of Bridgeport PD in Connecticut. And I go, hey, Alex Wilde, he's one of your police officers. I served with him in Baghdad. He goes, oh, yeah, great guy. I go, did you know that he saved 2 guys that were wounded by giving life-saving first aid tourniquets on their legs to keep them from bleeding to death and starting IVs and replacing their fluids? He goes, I didn't know about that. Okay. So our governor at the time was Governor Malloy. We deployed under Governor Rell, but Governor Malloy was the governor at the time. So I typed out a letter. I go, Governor Malloy, by any chance do you know that one of your Connecticut State troopers, who is part of your personal security detail, is Andrea Cloutier, and this is what she did? He didn't know. And it just kind of kicked me that nobody knew the story of the unit. Nobody knew these citizen soldiers, what they had done, what they had gone through, what they had achieved, what they had accomplished. And here they are, the boss, their best friend. They didn't know, because I keep relating these stories. People come up to me and say, oh, I knew somebody who was in the 143rd. And I tell them a story about that soldier, and they go, I didn't know about that. They never said anything about that. And so that motivated me to write the book, because I had to tell their story. And here we are today.
Well, and I'm imagining that a lot of these people are probably from different walks of life. Like I said, I don't know the ethnicity. You mentioned the gender of a couple of them. I don't know the ethnicity of these folks that you talked about, but I imagine that they probably come from everything from various ethnicities to even various religious backgrounds. Because even though it's being a war fought in Iran and Iraq and places that are in the Middle East, we do know that some of our soldiers are everything from Christians to Buddhists to Muslims even that are in our law and that are in our military. So I imagine that some of these stories that you have found have covered the spectrum of people's backgrounds in terms of where they are coming from. And also, you probably had people not just from your area of Connecticut, but you probably had stories of people even from the Southeast, where I'm based out of here in the Durham area, as is Mr. Middleton, our city council person. But you probably had stories from the Southeast, as well as like areas like New Jersey and New York, and even out in the West Coast, because we have listeners from throughout the world. So I imagine you probably had folks of these kinds of stories that were from throughout the area.
Oh, absolutely. The U.S. military is probably, and I'm talking about all of the military, is probably the biggest melting point of people that you could ever imagine. I mean, we had Lieutenant Shiverton. He was a platoon leader. Great guy. He's now a lieutenant colonel, maybe he made colonel by now. He's from Jamaica. We had one of our medics who was from Haiti and spoke better Creole than she did English. My commo chief, who ended up becoming an MP, was from Barbados. I mean, we had people from everywhere, Armando Torres, I put him in for a Bronze Star for, a gun battle he got into. We had everybody there. We were a team, all different races, all different, economic groups. A lot of the young men and women joined the military police, especially in our company, for a couple of different reasons. One, they want to get a foot in the door to law enforcement, which a lot of them did. We went over there with 7 state troopers, 12 municipal police officers, and 14 corrections officers. So getting into the military police helps get you that foot in the door for the job. The other thing is a tuition waiver. You're not the best student. You're not a student athlete. Your parents don't have a lot of bucks. the state of Connecticut will give you a tuition waiver if you join the National Guard. And so we were getting smarter